eldvmoore. Now it's a video on evolutionary theory and your well-informed opinions on it.
I believe evolution, Charles Darwin's theory, was just made up.
Yep, he just made it up out of thin air. The voyage of the Beagle never happened. He never went around and collected vast amounts of evidence. In his book, he never discussed anything about artificial selection before talking about natural selection. Nope, he just pulled it out of thin air. He just magicked it into existence.
To try to give an opinion of how man had evolved.
Yeah, it's just an opinion. It's not like it's backed by any evidence at all. No evidence, none.
Man didn't crawl out of the sea from a jellyfish and evolved from Cro-Magnon man beyond.
Wow. You're right. Man didn't just magically crawl out of the ocean as a jellyfish that turned into Cro-Magnon. If that's what you think evolutionary theory says, then no wonder you disagree with it, but that's not even close. I mean, come on. I'd like to correct one of the misconceptions I see with creationists all the time. This whole thing about macroevolution, I think the major reason that they all disagree with macroevolution is because they seem to think that it's a chicken giving birth to a dog, when actually macroevolution is really nothing more than a huge number of successive microevolutionary steps. That's it. That's all. Nothing more. But there's this opinion that it's a chicken giving birth to a dog or a dog giving birth to a monkey. It's nothing of the sort. It's just a large number of successive microevolutionary steps. I mean, say I were to take a boulder, and I were to chisel a tiny, tiny little bit off the boulder, and I did that once every single day. Now, it would take a long time, but eventually it would turn into just a bunch of pebbles. Microevolution becoming macroevolution is the same thing. Saying that microevolution happens but you don't agree with macroevolution is like saying I can get up and walk to the kitchen, but walking an entire city block is just absurd. I mean, the mechanism is exactly the same. It's just time scale. And that's been explained thousands of times, but these people are willfully ignorant and they refuse to accept it. But once again, I'll trounce the argument. And I don't really know if that's the argument he's making here, or if he's just throwing out completely ridiculous straw man, but let's continue.
Thorn man, Java man, but the Bible says in the beginning God created heavens and earth, and God made man in his own image and his likeness.
And most sophisticated theologians, if you trust their word, believe that the whole man made in God's image was more of a representation that we are spiritually similar to God and not physically similar to God. But you're also relying on the Bible, which also says some interesting things about the atmosphere being solid and rain coming from God opening the floodgates in the heavens and not from, like evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. So it doesn't know much about the water cycle either. It also says that the earth is held up on pillars. So if you're going to trust that for a scientific source, yeah.
That's scriptural, so God didn't have to experiment with man, give him 2 hands, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth. God don't have to do that because God is perfect. He's infinite in wisdom. He didn't have to do that. He knew exactly what...
Why do you have to take 6 days? Couldn't he have just magicked it all up in a single day? I mean, if he's infinitely powerful, it's just as absurd that he took 6 days than he took billions of years. He could have done it in a fraction of a second. It's absurd that he took any time to do it at all. He could have poofed it all into existence. So, that's not really a great argument there. Oh, he doesn't have to experiment. Well, who says he had anything to do with it to begin with? You're assuming that a priori, and you have yet to supply any evidence that there was a creation of man at all.
What he wanted to do and went ahead and did it. So, this theory that we are related, to each species, insects and animal kingdom, related to man, basically we're all taken from the dust of the earth, but God breathed into man's nostrils a breath of life and he became a living soul. Animals like lions, tigers, bears, monkeys, insects, kingdom, they don't have spirits.
And
we have the spirit
what
of
is
God
a spirit? What's your evidence that we have some spirit?
To the animal kingdom, the insects.
We are animals.
And any other kingdom. So, God is...
Now, one thing that I think all of you should look up, people watching this video, look up chimpanzees. They exhibit a lot of traits that we wouldn't attribute as animalistic traits. But yet, nobody would argue that chimps aren't animals. A lot of people argue that humans aren't animals. Humans are animals. It's just somewhat chauvinistic to say any different. Humans are animals. Just look up chimpanzees. There's been chimpanzees that have created art. Chimpanzees have their own social moral system. Elephants have also created art. So, humans, really, the only thing that separates us is magnitude. There's no distinct separation, only a magnitude separation. Sort of how the only difference between a mountain and a hill, really, is magnitude.
Provided salvation for mankind, because we are superior. And so, this theory of evolution, that mankind evolved...
Evolution is just a theory. Here's a hint. Look up the scientific definition of the word theory.
It's just something that was just made up. And even though they teach
that
just
pulled it out of the air.
Evolution, then they teach the Bible, how the heavens and earth were created. But that was just something that a man made up. That's a man-made theory. But the Bible
made up gravity,
is
too.
A fact. In the beginning, God created. Thank you.
The Bible is a fact? So, the atmosphere is solid, the earth rests on pillars, and rain comes from God opening the floodgates in heaven. Yeah, it sounds like fact to me. That's, well, besides just the First Amendment and the fact that your religion has no more evidence than any other religious claims, it's also some of those claims that it makes are part of the reason why we don't teach it in school. Evolution isn't something somebody just made up, any more than gravity is something somebody just made up. There were observations made, and the theory of evolution by natural selection, descent with modification, was proposed by Charles Darwin as an explanatory hypothesis, and then was supported with a vast amount of evidence, and today evolution has so much evidence. The genetic record, the fossil record, actual observed instances of speciation in the fossil record, yearly observed instances of microevolution. Look up retroviral DNA, too. And look up Begging the Question. I spam linked to Begging the Question in my last video response to you. You should look that up again. But anyway, look up the retroviral DNA sequencing. Look up Hox genes. All these things. Look up vestigial organs. There's so much evidence for evolution. It isn't something somebody just pulled out of their ass.